Prince Harry's war with the British press has entered a new and far more dangerous phase, because this is no longer only about reputation, headlines, or whether he can claim a moral victory. It is now about money, and potentially a breathtaking amount of it. After Harry's major defeat against the publishers of the Daily Mail, Associated Newspapers is reportedly seeking to remove a spending cap that could leave the Duke of Sussex exposed to a much larger legal bill than he may have expected. Some estimates being discussed around the case place the possible costs battle in the tens of millions, with figures as high as roughly $75 million being mentioned in commentary. If even part of that becomes Harry's responsibility, this would not simply be another bad news cycle, it could become a financial crisis. The key figure on the newspaper side is Paul Dacre, the powerful former editor of the Daily Mail and one of the most formidable names in British journalism. According to the discussion in the source material, Dacre and Associated Newspapers are not treating this as a polite legal cleanup after a difficult case. They appear to be going hard, seeking to recover as much as possible after defending themselves through a long, expensive and bruising High Court fight.
A total disaster for Prince Harry as the publishers of the Daily Mail newspaper seek to remove a spending cap which could leave the Duke with unlimited liability on legal costs. Now, Paul Dacre, the man in charge of the Daily Mail and its associated titles, is seeking to retrieve up to $75 million.
The view from Harry's critics is simple. He brought a case, failed to prove it, put journalists and executives through years of pressure, and now the bill has come due. Kelvin Mackenzie, the former editor of The Sun, reacted with obvious satisfaction to the situation. His central argument was that there was never a proper case because, in his view, there was never enough evidence. That is the point at the heart of this whole story. Harry and the other claimants could not simply say they believed they had been targeted or that they felt the press had behaved unlawfully. In a court of law, suspicion is not enough. A claimant has to show facts. They have to point to the moment, the method, the article, the source, the act, and the chain of evidence connecting the defendant to the wrongdoing. Mackenzie argued that Harry simply did not have that. That is the difference between public campaigning and litigation. In public, Harry can speak emotionally about his relationship with the press, his mother's death, his anger at tabloids, and his belief that the media has caused enormous damage. Many people may sympathize with parts of that, but a court is not there to validate pain. It is there to decide whether specific allegations have been proved. The judge in this case, after a detailed trial and a very long judgment, concluded that Harry and the other claimants had not proved what they needed to prove. The judgment was devastating because it did not simply hand Harry a technical defeat. It exposed the weakness of the case as a whole. The court, according to the discussion, made clear that the claimants had not provided the necessary evidence of unlawful information gathering by Associated Newspapers. This matters because the newspaper group had been forced to defend itself against serious accusations. Journalists were accused, in effect, of behaving dishonestly or unlawfully. Senior figures had to give evidence. The publisher had to spend huge sums defending its reputation. And after all of that, the court did not accept Harry's case. Mackenzie made an important point about the position of journalists and editors in court. He said that in his own era as an editor, he avoided certain legal battles because he understood how hostile a courtroom could be toward journalists. The press is not automatically loved by judges, politicians, juries, or the public.
Well, there was never a case, and as the judge pointed out, there was never any evidence. That is the reality. And when Harry got into the witness box, instead of relying on evidence, when you go into these high court things, you can't say what you think, what colours you like. Isn't that a nice cheese sandwich? You've got to say, on this day, X happened. And on Monday, I thought something rather strange happened to my phone. And on the Tuesday, they ran a story saying that I'd run off with 3 elephants. You need to have evidence. He had.
In fact, many people are instinctively ready to believe bad things about newspapers, especially after Britain's history of phone hacking and intrusive reporting. That makes Associated Newspapers' victory even more striking. This was not a case where the press entered with universal sympathy. It won because the judge did not find the claimant's evidence sufficient. That is why the costs fight is now so important. In England, the loser in civil litigation usually pays a large portion of the winner's legal costs. That is already a frightening prospect in a case of this size. But there can be an even harsher outcome if the court is persuaded that the losing side's conduct justifies a more severe costs order. The discussion focused on the possibility that Associated Newspapers could recover far more than the ordinary amount if the judge accepts that the case was weak, unreasonable, or not conducted in the way it should have been. There is also the question of whether any insurance behind Harry's side will actually cover the full amount. Litigation insurance can protect a claimant from catastrophic costs, but only under the terms of the policy. If insurers believe the case was presented to them on a basis that did not match what later emerged in court, they may try to limit or challenge what they have to pay. The argument raised in the source was that insurers could say they backed the case because they were told certain things about the evidence, only for the court to find that the evidence was not there. No one outside the case knows the precise insurance terms, but the possibility alone creates real danger for Harry. This is where the spending cap becomes such a serious issue. If there was a cap limiting exposure, and Associated Newspapers now succeeds in removing or widening it, Harry's risk changes dramatically. He could move from a painful but manageable loss into a ruinous financial obligation. That is why the case is no longer only about whether he was right or wrong in principle. It is about whether he can afford the consequences of being wrong in court. The psychological impact matters too. Harry has built much of his public identity around the idea that he is standing up to powerful institutions. He presents himself as someone willing to endure attacks because he is fighting for a larger truth. That kind of posture works only while the campaign looks noble, brave, or at least effective. Once the campaign starts producing massive bills, failed evidence, and humiliating judgments, the emotional story changes. The public begins to ask whether this was courage or obsession. They begin to ask whether Harry was fighting for justice or trying to force the world to confirm what he already believed.
The plaintiff, when he doesn't have the goods, and palpably doesn't have the goods, and the judge said so, you didn't have the evidence, then you can go after them for more of your costs than the costs which would normally be appropriate for such a hearing.
Well, that's right. And there is a concern that the insurance, which wasn't going to cover the totality of legal costs, may not be forthcoming at all. Because of that flimsy evidence, the insurers could argue that this was not conducted in good faith and it was never a solid case in the first place. So Harry could be on the hook for the whole lot.
There is a difference between losing a case and being seen as reckless. A person can lose honorably if the evidence was close, the law was uncertain, and the dispute was genuinely difficult. But if the case is publicly described as lacking evidence, and if the other side is now trying to recover huge costs, the defeat begins to look like poor judgment. That is why this moment is so dangerous for Harry's future credibility. He can survive public dislike. He can survive tabloid criticism. What is much harder to survive is the impression that he takes expensive decisions without understanding the consequences. The personal financial picture makes that question even more dramatic. Harry has inherited wealth from Princess Diana. Meghan earned money during her acting career, particularly from Suits. They have also had major commercial deals in America, but their lifestyle is expensive at a level most people can barely imagine. Their Montecito home is famously large, with enormous running costs, property taxes, maintenance, insurance, and staff.
Whichever way, whether it's only the bill he expected to pick up, or it's going to be the super bill, these are enormous amounts of money. So here comes the rub. He and his wife appear to live on effectively hot air. I mean, and as somebody once said to me, money is important. It's right up there with oxygen.
They also have private security, international travel, a reported property connection in Portugal, and the general expenses of maintaining a high-profile life in California. A royal title opens doors, but it does not make bills disappear. Mackenzie argued that the Sussexes appear to be living on status as much as substance. That may be harsh, but it captures a growing criticism of their post-royal life. Harry and Meghan have expensive surroundings, celebrity access, and global attention, but the output has not matched the early promise. Netflix has not turned them into an unstoppable media force. Spotify ended badly. Meghan's lifestyle brand has not yet become the commercial powerhouse she seemed to want. Archewell's public profile has become uneven. Invictus remains meaningful, but even that is frequently overshadowed by Harry and Meghan themselves. If Harry is hit with a massive legal bill, the glamorous image could quickly look fragile. The obvious question would be whether they need to liquidate assets, reduce expenses, or rethink the California life they worked so hard to present as freedom. Mackenzie suggested that one of the things to watch would be whether the Montecito home ends up for sale. That would be humiliating for the Sussex brand because the house is not just a residence. It is part of the image: privacy, independence, California success, and royal life reimagined under palm trees. Selling it under financial pressure would tell a different story. It would also raise a deeper question about the entire Megxit project. Harry and Meghan left Britain saying they wanted freedom, safety, and control over their lives. California was meant to be the proof that they could thrive outside the palace. But if the bills become too heavy, if the house becomes too expensive, if the media deals do not renew with the same enthusiasm, and if legal costs eat into the cushion they believed they had, then California stops looking like liberation and starts looking like an expensive experiment. The public would not need a formal admission of failure. The practical choices would speak for themselves. This is why the reported Portugal connection matters. A European base gives the Sussexes a softer landing. It allows them to spend more time near Britain without openly admitting they are coming back. It gives Harry a bridge to his old world and gives Meghan access to European prestige without the full pressure of living under British public scrutiny. If the Montecito dream becomes too costly, Portugal could become the halfway house between exile and return. Critics will watch that closely because a shift toward Europe would fit perfectly with the wider theory that reverse Megxit is already being prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can have any view you like about family relationship. Everybody has a dodgy family relationship. You can't stand your brother, your sister. I'm worried about my dad's rude to me. All that. You can all that. But when push comes to shove, money talks and bullshit walks. And so I expect you to see over the next year him showing a lot of interest in how well his dad is. Can I pop over to see you? Get about the insurance.
The second thing to watch, according to the commentary, is whether Harry suddenly becomes much more interested in repairing his relationship with King Charles. That may sound cynical, but it is one of the blunt theories now circulating around this costs crisis. If Harry needs financial security, or if he is worried about the future, then his father's goodwill matters more than ever. Charles is king, but he is also a father with a soft spot for his younger son. He is living with cancer, he is thinking about family, legacy, and grandchildren. Harry may understand that the window for reconciliation under Charles is much more open than it would be under William. That is where money and Megxit begin to overlap. A year ago, the Sussexes could still argue that they had built their own life and did not need the institution. Now, if the American commercial experiment is cooling and legal costs are rising, the pull of the royal family becomes stronger. Critics will watch for warmer language, more visits, more concern about Charles's health, more talk of family healing, and more attempts to soften the damage created by Spare and the interviews. Some of that may be sincere. Harry may genuinely miss his father, but the timing will still invite suspicion. Charles may be vulnerable to that approach because his instinct is personal before it is strategic. He knows what it is to be criticized. He knows the pain of family breakdown. He has always had a complicated relationship with both sons, but Harry is still his younger child and the grandchildren are innocent of the adult conflict. A father in his late 70s, facing health concerns and thinking about mortality, may not want to leave the relationship unrepaired. That is human and understandable. But for the monarchy, the personal and institutional consequences are not easily separated. William will likely see the same moves through a colder lens. He has lived through the Oprah interview, Spare, the Netflix series, the attacks on Catherine, and the repeated leaking and briefing around private matters. He will not see a sudden softening from Harry as simple family warmth. He will ask what has changed, what Harry wants, and whether Meghan and the Sussex team can be trusted with access. If money pressure is part of the background, William's suspicion will only harden. A brother can forgive many things in private, but a future king has to protect the institution his children will inherit.
1,000 bedrooms, 9,000 bathrooms, 4 million square miles of LA, right? I wonder whether that goes for sale. We are deciding that the house is too big for us.
Wow.
Right?
You think they may have to sell the house, which will be humiliating for Meghan, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we're going to move to Preston, right?
Spare remains a major obstacle because, as Mackenzie pointed out, words in a book do not go away. A television interview fades, a clip ages, but a book stays on the page. Harry wrote about private family matters, arguments, resentment, and deeply personal details. Those passages cannot be unsaid. If he now wants reconciliation, he has to deal with the fact that his own published words created wounds that are still open. A private apology may help, but it does not erase the public record. The biggest obstacle remains William. Many commentators believe that true reconciliation between the brothers is almost impossible, while Meghan remains central to Harry's life. That is not because all blame can be placed on Meghan. Harry made his own choices. He gave the interviews, he wrote the memoir, he signed the deals. But from William's point of view, Meghan is likely seen as part of the machinery that turned private family conflict into a global campaign. If Harry were ever to approach William and say he regretted what happened, the question would immediately be whether Meghan accepted that regret too, or whether she still saw the royal family as the enemy. The source discussion speculated very bluntly that the only way Harry could fully repair things with William would be if his marriage changed dramatically or ended. That is only speculation, and there is no confirmed indication that Harry and Meghan are separating. But the fact that such speculation now attaches itself to every conversation about royal reconciliation shows how damaged the family story has become. People no longer discuss Harry's return as a simple case of two brothers making peace. They discuss conditions, blame, influence, money, titles, and whether Meghan's presence makes trust impossible. Meghan herself was discussed through the lens of ambition and status. Mackenzie argued that she did not marry someone like herself. She married upward into one of the most famous families in the world. She had a role on a successful television show, but becoming the Duchess of Sussex transformed her global profile. Critics argue that she understood the value of that transformation immediately and has spent the years since trying to keep the benefits of royalty without accepting the limits of royal life. The titles for Archie and Lilibet are part of that debate. If Harry and Meghan truly wanted a private, ordinary, non-royal life, critics ask why prince and princess titles mattered. Supporters would say the children are entitled to them by royal convention and should not be punished for adult conflict. Critics answer that the titles preserve royal branding for the future. In America, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet may sound unusual, but in media and lifestyle terms, those titles still carry fascination. They are royal intellectual property, and the Sussexes have never shown much interest in surrendering that. That is the contradiction at the center of Meghan's position. She did not seem able or willing to live within the palace hierarchy, where she would never be at the top. The monarchy is a pyramid, and Harry and Meghan were never going to outrank Charles, William, Catherine, or the Wales children. In California, Meghan could be the center of her own operation. But the power of that operation still comes from the titles granted by the hierarchy she left, She rejected the structure while keeping the branding. This is why a possible return to Britain, or even a partial return to royal proximity, would be so valuable. If Meghan can be seen as connected to King Charles again, her brand becomes royal adjacent rather than exiled. If Harry can be seen as welcomed back, his importance is refreshed. If the children are connected to their grandfather publicly or semi-publicly, the Sussex story gains emotional softness. But if all of that happens while lawsuits, media briefings, and commercial ventures continue, then the late Queen's no half-in, half-out principle begins to look threatened. The danger for the palace is that this does not need to happen through a dramatic announcement. It can happen through atmosphere. A private meeting here, a warm source quote there, a carefully placed story about Harry missing home, a sympathetic magazine piece about Meghan supporting family healing, a small appearance by the children, and suddenly the Sussexes are no longer outside the royal story, they are orbiting it again. That may be exactly what they need if their American standing has cooled and their legal bills are rising. For the public, however, the question will be whether this is reconciliation or repositioning. Reconciliation requires accountability, apology, silence, and changed behavior over time. Repositioning requires only access and optics. Harry and Meghan have often been very good at optics. What they have not yet shown, at least to their critics, is the sustained discretion that would convince the royal family that private contact will remain private.
Right? Nor would many of the facts. He keeps himself to himself. When it comes to Harry, no matter what he does, it's all about Harry, right? And when he wrote that book, and it's an example of why you shouldn't write a book. When you write a book, those words never die. It's not even like a film. With a film, it can get old and, oh, did he say something? Oh, it's a moment. A book, those words stay on the page and are a wound that never heals, right? Now, however, he has then turned himself into, he can't deny it. He cannot say, I didn't say all these things. So it's a massive problem, but
if the legal defeat pushes them toward the palace will need to decide whether it is opening a door to healing or reopening a door to chaos. Harry's post-verdict statement made the situation worse. After losing, he described the judgment as a complete and obvious whitewash. That was an explosive phrase, especially because the same judge who delivered the ruling may also have influence over the costs questions that follow. From a strategic point of view, attacking the judgment in such harsh terms looked reckless. If a person knows the court still has to decide how expensive the defeat will be, publicly denouncing the ruling hardly seems wise. There is also a constitutional oddity. Harry is the king's son. The courts operate under the authority of the crown. When Harry attacks a high court judgment in those terms, he is not only criticizing a legal outcome, he is placing himself in conflict with one of the institutions his own father symbolically heads. He has every right to disagree with a judgment, but there is a difference between measured disagreement and language that suggests the court protected the newspaper group in bad faith. For a royal-born figure, that difference matters. According to the discussion, even a source close to Harry's legal side described the statement as unnecessary and foolish. That reaction is not surprising. Lawyers tend to prefer calm, controlled language after a defeat, especially when costs and potential appeals remain live issues. Harry's statement sounded emotional, not strategic. To his supporters, it may have sounded brave. To his critics, it sounded like a man unable to accept that the court had not validated his grievance. The court evidence also raised uncomfortable questions about Harry's reliability. Commentators seized on apparent inconsistencies around whether he had attended a festival, especially given references in Spare, and around his relationship with Charlotte Griffiths, now editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday. Harry's position, as described in the discussion, was that he did not cultivate friendships with journalists and cut them off when he discovered who they were. Critics argued that the evidence around Griffiths complicated that claim and struck at the heart of his broader narrative about never engaging with journalists in that way.
And says, that stuff I said about you in the book, I wholly regret, right? And here's the rub. I was doing it under pressure from my wife. And actually, I'm pleased to tell you, or I'm displeased to tell you, that she and I just want to keep it to yourself, William, if you'd be grateful. We are going our separate ways. I'm moving to a terraced house in Preston, and she is moving to a smaller.
The safest way to frame it is not to say that Harry was found to have lied, but that his evidence gave critics ammunition and did not help his credibility. That credibility problem now extends beyond the courtroom. Harry has spent years trying to define himself as a man of principle, fighting corrupt media power. But if the public sees him as someone who brings weak cases, attacks judges when he loses, and expects sympathy despite huge costs, the moral authority of that campaign shrinks. The press may now feel less intimidated by him, especially Associated Newspapers, which has fought him and won. That matters for the Sussexes, because media fear has been part of their leverage. If newspapers feel more confident reporting on them, the balance of power changes. The Daily Mail has now been on the winning side against Harry more than once. The source also referred to Harry settling a previous Mail on Sunday case connected to reporting on his royal security battle in January 2024. That earlier outcome was already embarrassing. This latest defeat is much larger. Together, they create a pattern. Harry keeps choosing the Mail as an enemy, and the Mail keeps surviving the fight. If the newspaper group now recovers major costs, it will look not only vindicated, but emboldened. That could change the tone of future coverage. For years, Harry and Meghan's legal posture created a kind of warning sign around them. Some editors may have asked whether a story was worth the fight, even if they believed it was defensible. A claimant with money, fame, and a willingness to sue can influence behavior even before any case is filed. But once that claimant loses badly, and once the newspaper that fought back is seen as having prevailed, the fear weakens. Editors may become more willing to test the boundaries. Reporters may become less cautious. Commentators may become sharper. That is another hidden cost of this defeat. The Sussexes may discover that lawsuits can silence some stories for a while, but a failed lawsuit can invite more scrutiny than ever. The public now knows more about the weakness of the evidence, the legal strategy, the contradictions raised in court, and the money at stake. Instead of closing down discussion, the case has opened new lines of criticism. That is the opposite of what Harry wanted. He wanted to put the press on trial. Instead, his own judgment is now being judged. That is why Lord Rothermere's role as owner matters. Major litigation of this scale requires financial backing and institutional nerve. It would have been cheaper in some ways to settle and move on, as other media groups have sometimes done. But Associated Newspapers chose to fight. Mackenzie praised the decision because it meant the publisher stood behind its journalists and forced the allegations to be tested in court. From the paper's point of view, a 400-page judgment rejecting the claims is not just a legal win. It is a public defense of its newsroom. None of this means newspapers are saints. Britain has seen real media misconduct, and many people have suffered from intrusive or unlawful behavior. Harry's anger at the press did not come from nowhere, but this case reminds us that broad anger is not the same as proof against a particular defendant. A person can be right that the press has behaved badly in general and still fail to prove that one newspaper group committed the specific acts alleged in one lawsuit. The financial consequences could reshape Harry's future. If he has to pay millions, perhaps tens of millions, then every part of the Sussex business model comes under pressure.
Would be stretching around the court. It's only because I've lost this. It's got nothing to do with this, I can tell you that. This is in great shape. What if you're Harry? Why on earth would you go down this route? You must have known that you must have known from her very personality, and for the first time that she was introduced to the family, they must have known this is never, ever going to work. What? And I could understand William saying, hey, don't go too fast.
Correct.
Are you sure? Anybody who's had in their
Security costs become harder to justify, the Montecito home becomes harder to maintain, vanity projects become riskier, legal crusades become almost impossible. Even the emotional language around family reconciliation becomes harder to separate from practical need. Money does not explain every family move, but when a massive bill appears, money becomes part of the story. Invictus is especially important because it is one of the last strong pillars of Harry's public identity. The games themselves are a good cause, and many critics who dislike Harry still respect the veterans and the idea behind the event. But critics argue that Harry has a habit of making everything he touches about himself. Instead of standing quietly behind the cause, he often becomes the headline. That creates a problem. If commercial backers, partners, or audiences begin to see Invictus less as a veteran-focused movement and more as part of the Sussex image machine. The same issue has affected his other charitable associations. The source mentioned the painful Centrebile dispute, the fading public energy around Archwell, and concerns about Invictus backing whether every criticism is fair or not. The overall picture is damaging. Harry needs causes to give his life meaning after royal duty, but if the causes are overshadowed by Harry's own drama, then they cannot fully stabilize his reputation. Without Invictus, critics argue, there is very little left that defines him publicly in a positive way. That leads to the harshest question. Who is Prince Harry now? He is no longer a working royal. He is not a Hollywood producer in any meaningful sense. He is not a conventional businessman. He is not a journalist, a politician, or a statesman. He is a famous man because of the family he left and a wealthy man because of the status he inherited. But fame and inherited status are not the same as substance. If everything he builds turns back into grievance, lawsuits, or royal nostalgia, the public will eventually wonder what he offers beyond the story of leaving. Mackenzie described Harry as a man with little real power, living on the West Coast and trying to remain relevant. That is a brutal assessment, but it reflects a growing mood among Sussex critics. Harry is still globally recognizable, but recognition is not the same as respect. He can still make headlines, but headlines are not the same as influence. He can still attract attention, but attention can become ridicule if the public sees him as trapped in the same complaints. Meghan's absence from certain public moments adds another layer. Mackenzie suggested that she avoided being photographed in Britain because she and Harry risk being booed. That may be an exaggeration, but it is plausible that public hostility is part of the calculation. Meghan's popularity in Britain remains low, and any visible return would be risky. A bad public reaction would be humiliating, especially for someone whose brand depends on control, elegance, and admiration. Avoiding the camera can be a form of protection. But avoidance has costs too. If Meghan is absent when Harry is under pressure, critics interpret it as distancing. If she appears only when the optics are favorable, the partnership looks strategic rather than supportive. If she returns to royal adjacent spaces only when there is a chance of brand value, the public will question her sincerity. That is why the Sussexes are in such a difficult position. Visibility hurts them, but invisibility also tells a story. The idea of Harry repairing things with Charles while Meghan remains unpopular creates a delicate royal problem. Charles may want to see his son and grandchildren. He may want to forgive. He may feel the pressure of illness and time. But any warmth toward Harry risks being interpreted as a pathway back for Meghan too.
Understand that what happens when you go into a high court action or any court action, you can't be sure what the outcome's going to be. The trouble is, all his legal advisors and the thing's going ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I mean, you're running up millions and millions of pounds and dollars in legal costs. We're all saying it's going great, ka-ching, it's going great, ka-ching, carry on fighting, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And then he finds out I'm left with a big bill, and then he decides to let the judge have it. What is the point of letting the judge have it? He's so used to running things or being the top of the tree himself that he doesn't.
William and Catherine are likely to be far more cautious. Catherine, in particular, has faced serious health challenges and may have no desire to be pulled back into Sussex stress. If there are future family gatherings, the personal emotional dynamics could be extremely difficult. That is why reconciliation is not as simple as Harry calling home. Trust has been broken at multiple levels. Charles may separate private fatherhood from public kingship, but William may not. Catherine may choose distance for her own peace. The palace may fear that any private contact becomes a briefing, and the public may suspect that money, not remorse, is driving the change. Harry would need time, humility, and silence to rebuild trust. Those have not been the dominant qualities of his public strategy so far. The next signs will be easy to identify. First, watch the costs hearing and whether Associated Newspapers succeeds in widening Harry's liability. Second, watch the insurance question and whether there are indications that the claimants are not fully protected. Third, watch the Sussex finances, property moves, reduced spending, new deals, or sudden urgency around commercial projects.
That's the problem. The issue for him is that he has no power. He has no power. He is nobody. He's kind of an ex-prince hanging around on the West Coast, trying to get invited to A-lister parties. He's not a person of substance himself, and it's an incredible thing to say. How old is the guy? In his 40s now? Right?
41.
41. So he's not relevant.
Fourth, watch the royal relationship. More friendly language about Charles, more UK visits, and more attempts to soften the family story. Fifth, watch the press. If Fleet Street feels newly confident, Harry and Meghan may face a much tougher media environment than before. For the British press, this ruling could be a turning point. Newspapers that once feared Harry's legal threats may now feel that he can be challenged and beaten. That does not give the press permission to behave irresponsibly, but it may reduce the chilling effect of Sussex litigation. If reporters believe the courts will require evidence rather than emotion, they may be more willing to investigate and publish stories about Harry and Meghan. That is a major shift in the long-running battle between the Sussexes and the media. For Harry, the lesson should be sobering. He cannot sue his way back to dignity. He cannot attack judges into giving him vindication. He cannot keep burning bridges and then expect the same institutions to rescue him. He cannot live forever on Diana's legacy, royal titles, and public sympathy. At some point, he has to build something stable, disciplined, and useful, or accept that the life he chose outside the palace may not have the importance he imagined. The tragedy is that there was a version of Harry's post-royal life that could have worked.
Look, I think Harry made his bed. In fact, he's lying in it with Meghan. Is the truth about the matter? They are very unpopular people, and the reason she didn't come anywhere last time, right, to be photographed, is quite clear, right? She'd be booed. They would both be booed.
Wow.
Which would be a shocking moment for them, rather than all that "Hooray, whoa!" and all that "Woo, woo." It will be.
He could have focused quietly on veterans, mental health, and fatherhood. He could have built a smaller, more credible life away from constant conflict. He could have used his platform sparingly and let the work speak. Instead, the brand became dominated by interviews, accusations, lawsuits, memoir revelations, and attempts to remain royal while attacking royalty. Now, the legal bill may be forcing the question that public criticism could not. What happens when grievance becomes too expensive? That is why this costs fight matters so much. It may expose the true price of Harry's campaign against the press. It may reveal whether his financial independence is as strong as it looked. It may push him closer to Charles, further from William, and into an even more awkward relationship with the monarchy he left. It may embolden the Daily Mail and the wider press. And it may show that the Sussex fairy tale of freedom in California was never as secure as it appeared. Harry wanted to slay dragons. Instead, he may now be facing the invoice. And in the end, that invoice could do more damage than any headline